We want to, on behalf of the Southwestern Union Family Ministries, Women's Ministries, and Children's Ministries Department, we want to welcome you to our broadcast today. Thank you for joining us. We are continuing in a series as we're focusing in on mental and emotional health. And today we have with us as our presenter, Dr. Harold Gene Wright, Doctor of Psychology. And we want to thank God for him. Dr. Wright is a clinical psychologist, clinical and forensic psychologist, and he's currently serving the city of Philadelphia as the director of behavioral science and justice related services. And he's also and serves as adjunct professor of psychology at Temple University there in Philadelphia. So we're glad to have him here. And he is a strong believer in Jesus Christ, a follower of Jesus Christ, and he puts a makes practical application of psychology and the spiritual aspect. We all are interested in having to be emotionally and mentally and spiritually balanced and have great health with that. And so we are pleased to have him with us once again. Thank you so much, Dr. Wright, for being with us this morning. And we ask that the Lord will bless us in this presentation. And to our listening audience, if you have questions that you develop during the presentation, you can quickly put those on the chat. And at the end of Dr. Wright's presentation, we'll have opportunity for question and answers, and so that he can field the questions that you may have. We pray that this presentation will be indeed a great blessing to you today. Dr. Wright, thank you so much for being with us and welcome.
Thank you so much. So glad to be with you again. Looking forward to the discussion.
You were with us in November in 2020, November 8th, as I recall, and you made a statement, Doc, during that presentation as you were addressing the impact of trauma on the faith community. And you made a statement that stayed with me, and I'm sure, hopefully, it stayed with many of those that were with us during that broadcast. And you said, we are not in the same boat, but we are all in the same storm, meaning that our circumstances may be different, but we are all attempting to try to maintain our emotional, spiritual, and mental health during these times in which we are living, which are very challenging. We thought that at the end of 2020 things would get better, but this thing has continued on into 2021. And so with that, I'm going to turn the time over to you, and we look forward to what the Lord has given you to present to us today. May God bless you.
Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. So glad to be back with everyone today. And I'm going to share my screen here so we can get started here. Let me pull this up here. Can you all see that? If I can get a signal.
Not yet, Doc.
Not yet. Okay. All right. How about now? Right.
Yes, we can see it.
All right. Thank you so much. So welcome. I'm so glad to be with you again. As you can see, our topic is body, mind, and spirit, health and wellness in the 21st century. And as Elder Griffith alluded to, the last time I was with you, we talked about the impact of trauma. We talked about a lot of things, specifically dealing with the pandemic, obviously some of the social unrest. So much has happened since November, as we all know. We've had a change in power in the White House, and a lot of other things have gone on over the last several months. But as Elder Griffith talked about, we are still in a storm. And yes, we are not in the same boats. When I think about the boats that some of us are in, I talked about, the economy. I talked about health. I talked about age and pre-existing conditions. I talked about family challenges and where we are in our walk with God in terms of our spiritual challenges. So I want to really dig deeper into some of that today and give you some visuals to go along with what I said last time. So with that in mind, understand that the boat that you're in is unique, even if you're within a family, in your microcosm of family, even within your own household, it is still not the same boat because your individual experiences and how you deal with the challenges that we are faced with. And that's why I made that statement, because even within the nuclear family, children see things differently, experience things differently than the adults, than the parents, et cetera, et cetera. So with that in mind, I really want to start with a statement by Ellen G. White. A lot of people are not always aware of the fact that she was a proponent and a supporter of studying the mind and the body and the spirit, and that connection, that holistic approach was something that she was ahead of her time when she was talking about these things. So the first thing that I wanted to bring your attention to is to deal with minds is the greatest work ever committed to men. And we could broaden that statement by saying committed to human beings, committed to humankind, because in 2021, we recognize that there are so many people working on the front lines, our co-responders, which I call our essential people, and the people that are the main individuals that we have to deal with that service us. And so people working in hospitals, our law enforcement, firefighters, and I also list clergy as first responders and co-responders. I list teachers and educators and administrators in the church as first responders and co-responders. And I say that because of the work that you do. The second quote by Ellen G. White: "He who created the mind and ordained its laws provided for its development in accordance with them." That means that we are all working together in this space. And then another quote I'd like to start with comes from the World Health Organization. It really sets us up to talk about what health and wellness in the 21st century is and what it will look like. And so this statement is very helpful for us as a springboard to our conversation today. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of infirmity or disease and infirmity. That's very important because many people look at health as just a physical component. And the Seventh-day Adventist Church has probably the best health message that you can think of in the last century or so. And some people think it really tends to lean on the physical health, nutrition, what to eat, what not to eat, what to drink, what not to drink. But I submit to you that based on what the quotes that we have from Ellen White, that we can also say that the Adventist Church can be and should be a proponent and a leader in terms of behavioral health, looking at all the other aspects of health besides physical health. We all want good physical health, but we also want good mental health, behavioral health, spiritual health, economic health. And so this next slide is really, really important because it's going to really, I want you to wrap your mind around this slide, because when I talk about health and wellness in the 21st century, I'm borrowing from SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Association administration. These 8 dimensions of wellness are not the only dimensions of wellness that exist, but these are ones that I am particularly favor because I see everything in here that makes a holistic approach meaningful. And so you'll easily see that the ones that people talk about, as you see there, physical, you see that's the one. But if you start at the top, what about emotional health, financial health, social health, your relationships? That's what it means when I say social health, your relationships, spiritual health, occupational, right? You see physical, intellectual, environmental. And so as an example, if you go to your physician and you do the treadmill training, and you look at, they say your heart is healthy and you've passed all your tests. You're good. You're physically healthy. Well, look at these other things on this chart. If you have a good health report from your physician, but you do not have good relationships with your children, that's social. Or you do not have good relationship with your spouse or people in the community or people on your job, are you healthy? Again, let's say you can run a marathon. That is wonderful. I wish I could. 26 miles, right? Great. That means you're in good physical health. But if you can't pay your bills, are you healthy? And so you see my point, and you can take each one of these concentric circles as they go across each other. None of them are separated. They're all connected. That's what health and wellness in the 21st century should be for all of us. Yes, we want a good health report for our physician. Yes, we want to be able to exercise and do all those things that the Adventist health message talks about: eating well, drinking water, exercising, getting plenty of sleep. All of that is essential. But we also have to look at these other areas of health. And so keep this slide in mind as we continue when we talk about health. When you look at factors influencing health and you look at the left side of this pie chart, you'll see that many of the things on the left side of the pie chart are things that are not really in our control. The environment. Many of us were born where we're born, and we live where we live, and we grew up where we grew up, and we do not have a lot of control over that. Same thing with our human biology. We do not choose our parents. We do not choose our ancestors. We are born into the world the way we are. And so our DNA, our human biology is not part of our control. And then, of course, healthcare, is obvious, not part of our control. The right side of the chart, though, the right side of the pie chart are things that we control. These are life choices, lifestyle, if you will. And that's 51% of the pie chart, which means we have more control over our choices than we do our biology, than we do our environment, and then we do our healthcare. And so what we eat, what we drink, what we put into our body, how we exercise, how much rest we get, where we go, where we don't go, all of those things are in our control, including who we hang out with, who we spend time with, and what we do when we have that time. And so last time I was with you, we talked about the impact of trauma, and we gave you a surface view, and I want to give you a little more detail today. And when you think about the impact of trauma, an individual's experience of trauma impacts every area of their human function. Now, this is important because when we talked about that same storm, different boats, this really kind of breaks it down for you. When you think about the physical, the mental, the behavioral, the social, and the spiritual, each of those areas are impacted when we are experiencing trauma or traumatic events, or we're trying to process trauma in our lives. It impacts all across our whole life. If you look at those examples, that is pretty much all of the human existence. And so part of that is coping with stress. And so it's important for us to understand that sometimes stress can turn into trauma, but a lot of times stress is just something that we deal with on a daily basis. And so it's important that we talk about it just briefly. And so this first definition here, this is a dictionary definition: an applied force or system of forces that tends to strain or deform a body, a state of extreme difficulty, pressure, or strain. And I put in parentheses there, trials and tribulations. When you think about your trials and tribulations on a day-to-day basis, you may categorize that as stress. And so it's important to look at the different types of stress that you may be experiencing. We have the more common that everybody thinks about, which is distress, which is more of the negative things that happen to us, the result of a negative situation or event, hurts, pains, disappointments, those kind of things. But very few people think about, even though people recognize it exists, very few people think about and focus on eustress, which is generally involves positive situations or events. An example: you're graduating from college. Maybe you have already accepted a job in a new city, and God is such a blessing, God. You're also going to take on a spouse. You're going to get married. Now, all three of those things are very positive things. Graduating from college, getting your education, wonderful. Getting a new job, fabulous. You have to move to a new city. Anybody that's ever moved knows how stressful moving is, but it's a positive thing. Closing on a house, positive thing, yet stressful, right? Those are the kind of things that people don't think about, and your body doesn't always recognize the difference between whether it's good stress or bad stress. Your body just recognizes stress. There is a physiological reaction to stress, whether it is a good stress or a stress from a negative event. And so when you think of stressor, it's an agent or condition that causes stress. Think person, place, or thing. Now, we're virtual today, so I can't really see. If we were all in the room, I would ask you to raise your hand, but not look left or look right, and ask you, who are the stressors in your life? What are the stressors in your life? And now hopefully some of you are kind of thinking and nodding like, yeah, I know a few people that stress me out, or I know a few things or a few situations. And so when you think of stress, think people, places, and things. Those are the three areas that tend to bring us stress. And so where areas of stress are most damaging, not a surprise, physical. And so resulting in illness or injury. Anytime we have physical stress, we can be injured. Our immune system can bring us illness. When we're not feeling our best, we're not getting enough sleep, can bring us stress. Emotional, resulting in mental fatigue, forgetfulness, sadness, and for some people, anger and being belligerent. Psychological stress, resulting in mental disorders, behavioral dysfunctions, breakdowns, and then, of course, spiritual distress or spiritual stress, resulting in discouragement, collapse of faith for some, and apathy. That apathy, that just means that it's kind of ho-hum. You know what? I'm going to go to church every week because I've always gone to church every week, but I'm not really getting anything out of it. I'm just checking boxes here, you know? And so that's an important thing to pay attention to when you think about the spiritual stress and what it can do when you are not really involved or engaged, okay? And so physiology of stress, and I talked about this a little bit last time when we met in November, that fight versus flight, and I would add freeze. And I talked about the propensity to want to fight, to want to fight or flight or freeze, and what it helps us do. It's a natural phenomenon, but when it's turned on and when it's not needed, it can turn into anxiety and stress. So that adrenaline, that cortisol that flows through the body when you need to protect yourself, or you need to run, or you need to freeze, that is not particularly helpful when there's not any danger. And where we are right now with this pandemic, it's an invisible enemy. We can't see it. We can't taste it. We can't smell it. We can't touch it. And so we don't even know what we're running from, what we're fighting, what we're trying to stay, what we're trying to freeze from. And so it's a phenomenon that is really challenging when you have a battle with an invisible foe. And so that heightened arousal that I'm talking about, that increased flow of adrenaline, that hyper anticipation, worry and anxiety, what's going to happen next? You read the newspaper, if you still read newspapers, or you get the line from the news, or you get the media reports about how many deaths have occurred, and the number of people that have died in the United States from COVID-19, the number of cases that we have, and what we did or didn't do to protect ourselves. And all of these things bring on more stress for more people. And then that whole sheltering in place. Remember, I talked about we are not social distancing. We are sheltering in place. We still want to be social, okay? Even though you have to protect yourself, wear a mask if you're going out, all of those things. But you can be social on Zoom. You can be social on the phone. Many people are doing the drive-by waving and drive-by birthday parties and drive-by graduation celebrations. So you still can be social as you shelter in place or keep within your own family. All right. Okay. Another thing that's important is the behavioral health challenges connected with stress. And this is something that really hits home for those of us in the church, because we don't often talk about these things in the church. Okay. Depression, anxiety, substance abuse. But I submit to you that depression affects over 17 million adults, about 7% of the adult population. Do you imagine that there's no Christians in that group? Do you imagine that there are no clergy in that group? Do you think that there are no Seventh-day Adventists in that group or faith leaders in that group? Of course there are. 17 million Americans. Anxiety, which is the most common mental health challenge in the US, impacts about 40 million, or about 19% of the population. Really disturbing. About 7% of children aged 3 to 17 experience anxiety each year and develop symptoms within that year. Again, can you imagine that in that group of 40 million, it doesn't involve friends, family, and neighbors that are close to you? Of course it does. And then, of course, substance abuse, which is something that most Christians, especially Seventh-day Adventists, we don't talk about, because we have rules that say don't drink, don't smoke, don't do this, don't do that. And then we close the book and walk away as if everybody's following that. Well, Stress and anxiety, I can tell you, bring on what we call self-medication or self-comforting. And some people choose substances. And so do not be surprised, do not be shocked, and do not be ashamed of the fact that these things are even in our church. 21% of adults with a substance use disorder also experience a major depressive disorder, and that was in 2018. What that means is that people who are experiencing behavioral health challenges often self-medicate. And it doesn't always have to be drugs or alcohol. It could be a legally prescribed medication that one abuses. And so take in consideration and take stock of the fact that being a member of a particular religious organization does not absolve you from the challenges that happen to all human beings. And so I wanted to give you a good example of some of this stress and what it looks like. In one of my other books, I talked about the slow crumble versus the fast implosion. And I'm really trying to make a comparison to how our bodies take on this stress and what we do. And so for those of you that are maybe over 40, you may remember that they used to tear down buildings with a wrecking ball. Okay. And that wrecking ball would come and it would swing and it would hit the building. The building would not crumble at the first blow. It took time. The wrecking ball had to continuously hit the building, and eventually the building would collapse. Okay. And so for the metaphor here, what I'm suggesting is that we are the building, and life is that wrecking ball. Sometimes life, just keeps hitting you, right? And we do not crumble with the first blow. No, it's a cumulative impact, that cumulative stress. Over time, it has a predictable outcome if we do not seek help. And so that slow crumble versus the fast implosion. What's the fast implosion? Well, nowadays, the buildings, they don't use a wrecking ball, most likely. Nowadays, they set explosives around the key points of the building, usually the foundation. And then you walk away in the distance, they have a fence put up, and at some point somebody pushes a button or they push down and it just blows up the building and it implodes all in one inside the fence. And so whether it's the slow cumulative effect of stress, or whether you're that person that is a walking time bomb, where all you're waiting for is the wrong word, the wrong look, or the wrong situation, and you will implode. We know people like that, don't we? We know people that all it takes is the wrong word, the wrong person, the wrong situation, and they lose their cool. That's that walking time bomb. It doesn't matter if it's the slow implode, the slow crumble, or the fast implosion. The result is still the same. The building collapses. And if we are the building and life brings us those stressors, we want to make sure that we have ample supports and we are able to reach out, because health in the 21st century means we have to take advantage of all the resources and all the people that God has put in this world to help us. And so coping with stress is very important. And these are just a couple of things I put up because they're things that I like to do. So I'm biased, right? And so massage, I had one a couple of weeks ago. Oh, it was wonderful with all the stress and tension in your shoulders and your back and your neck. That's something that I suggest. Do something nice for yourself. Put yourself on the calendar. It's something I always tell clergy. Make sure you put your name on the calendar. The other one is mindfulness meditation. Now, this is not the same as doing your Bible study in the morning. This is not the same as doing worship. Okay, those are great and wonderful. Please keep doing those things. This is something that is very particular where you have to have a quiet space, a quiet place. Me, when we used to be able to go to work every day and all that, I would do it in my car. So it doesn't take a big space. It doesn't take a lot of time, but I would just sit and I would close my eyes and I would take 5 deep breaths and I would take them in and I would breathe and I would feel my respiratory system heaving, taking in air and taking it out. And then I would think about a positive thing. For some people, that is maybe thinking about fields of wheat. For other people, maybe the ocean's tide, or whatever it works for you, right? You can put a little music on if you want, but that mindfulness meditation, being present in the here and now, not spending your time regretting the past, not spending time wringing your hands about the future. Mindfulness is really getting in touch with who you are, where you are, and what's going on right now, in a way that gives you solace. And so that's important. Then, of course, exercise. We're always going to want to recommend exercise because exercise has so many valuable things besides the physical aspect. It also helps you with your psychological, your emotional, your spiritual being, that holistic approach. Exercise has multiple positive outcomes. And so one of the things I really wanted to cover today that kind of touched on one of the things I mentioned in November is hostility and depression and the hurt that can come from it. The reason this is important, because if you look at this chart here, personality type is less predictive of health problems than is hostility. You know any hostile folks? You know any people that may be that fast implosion I talked about? They're just walking around waiting for the wrong word, waiting for the wrong person, looking for a confrontation. That person, that hostile person, that person that has hostility, the data has shown us that that person, that type personality, is prone to greater risk of heart disease. Proneness to anger is a major risk factor for these people, right? And so that is very, very important. And people don't always behave the same when they're depressed. Some people strike out, some people go in and hold it in, and other people are very hurtful to other people. And so what can we do? Emotional inhibition and expression. I'm telling you, there's a lot of people out there that are hurting, that are keeping it inside. They're holding it close to the vest, as they say. And then there are people that are just imploding all over everybody. Well, here's the thing. In both cases, there has to be some level of confession and forgiveness. Now, what do I mean by that? Suppressing our emotions, that becomes stressful to the body because our body naturally wants to release. Just like the body wants to release toxins. That's why exercise is great. You sweat and the toxins and the impurities come out of the body. Drinking water. Some people add a little something, a little lemon or a little cayenne pepper so they can release toxins. Exercise does the same thing, but also confession. Confession is good for the soul. Now, caution, you can't confess to everybody. I don't recommend you stand up in the middle of prayer meeting or the middle of church service and confess. That's not the time. You know, confession, especially if you know with whom you harmed, is best if you take that to the individual that you need to express that to. Now, everyone will not receive your confession and everyone won't receive your request for forgiveness. That's not the point. Confession and forgiveness is for the individual that is expressing it. So 2 ways of letting go of negative emotions: confession. I'm sorry, I did wrong. Will you accept my apology? That is for you. The person on the other end of that may say no. They may choose not to receive your confession. And the person that you're asking forgiveness may say, no, I'm mad at you and I don't want to forgive. Matter of fact, I don't ever want to talk to you again. That could be the outcome. It doesn't matter. The forgiveness and the confession is not for that person. Forgiveness is for you. Now, that's important because a lot of people have experienced trauma. And if you're waiting for the other person to say something or do something to change that, you may be waiting a long time. And that's why it's important to take it upon yourself to say, look, I have the power to move on from what hurt me. I have the power to move on from who hurt me. And that is by forgiving it. Now, forgiving it does not mean you condone it, and it does not mean you accept it as it was okay. No, 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 no. That's not what it says. Forgiveness is simply saying, Lord, I need to move on. I need to put that thing and that person and that incident in another place and behind me so I can live my life. That's the prayer. Lord, give me the strength to move on from this. And whether that person that hurt you ever admits it, ever comes around, ever asks for forgiveness, ever confesses, does not matter. Holding it in actually damages you. Keeping anger and hate for that person actually is harmful to you. It doesn't harm them. And all the bad and negative wishes toward them doesn't actually touch them. It only touches you. And so that forgiveness, again, it's for you, not for the other person. And so when you think about heartfelt forgiveness, and I want you to look at this chart really quickly, and we're going to move on. You'll see that the blue line is hurt, the red line is grudge, the purple line is empathy, and then the aqua line is forgive. And if you look at the second intervals and the imagery and recovery and the time in which it takes, look at how long hurt takes and holding a grudge takes. Some people hold grudge for years, right? But look at where empathy and forgiveness are. the recovery is so much faster, right? And it lasts longer. And so what can we do? We can draw on social support. And I recommend this. And even though we're in a pandemic, again, we have within our own family, which is the safest place is with, dealing with your own family, not mixing with other groups. I get it. Again, we've been blessed with this platform called Zoom, Streamline, StreamYard. We have Blue Jean. We have all kind of ways, Teams, you name it. There's a way to connect with people. So instead of focusing on what we can't do, where we can't go, and what we don't have, let's take advantage of God's blessing of what we do have, where we can go, and who we do have. And so friends can help. People who have networks, close connections live longer than those who don't. No man, no woman is an island. No one stands alone. And so human beings are interdependent. That means we need each other. Partner support. Again, within your immediate family, don't be stingy with the hugs. Matter of fact, hug more often now than maybe you did before. People need to be touched. People need to be felt. People need to know that someone cares. And for human beings, that touch of support, it elevates oxytocin, which is the hormone that induces relaxation. So there is a therapeutic component of hugging, of touching. Giving support to others can be a valuable source of comfort, not just for the person receiving the hug or the support. It also manifests positive in you. The individual who's giving the hug also benefits because you see the reaction of the person receiving your gift. That is so powerful. And so hugs and health, very important. Again, another chart. Hopefully you're not bored with the charts, but I wanted to show you tangibly in science that this stuff is real. Alone, people who live alone have a more difficult time. It doesn't mean it can't be done. It just means it's more difficult. You have the stranger, right? The husband, and then you have, of course, the super couples. And we all like to raise our hands. We say, who's the super couple? But let me tell you a quick story. I remember when I was in college and I was a PK, I was a preacher's kid. And so my least favorite part of the whole church service is when they would play the music and everybody had to get up and greet each other. Remember that? Some people used to do that. It's probably been 10 months since any of us have done that. But when we go back to having church in person, we'll probably be doing that again. Well, when I was a teenager, I didn't like that. It was my least favorite part of the service. I didn't want to get up. I didn't want to shake hands. I didn't want to hug and all that stuff. Right. And every time the music would play, I was like, oh, here we go. I would get up. I would go and I would, just kind of go through the motions. Well, one day, an elderly woman in our congregation came up to me, and she was just a tiny little woman compared to me. And she hugged me and she just disappeared in my arms. And she said to me, oh, I so much look forward to these weekly hugs because, I live alone and all through the week, I never get to hug anybody. Well, I tell you, you could have knocked me over with a feather because that's when I understood this chart. Years later, I see this chart. Now I understand. But that elderly woman, that senior citizen taught me a lesson that day, that the hug may not be for me. The hug, the encouraging word, may be for the person that needs it. Drawing on social support, coping with friends is so important. Close relationships. In close relationships, the support person may also be the source of stress. That's a challenge. And that's why a lot of married couples, in this time of sheltering in place are struggling. They didn't have another platform. They didn't have a plan B, so to speak. Kids are at home. If you have kids, the partner is at home all the time. Nobody's going anywhere. You're all stuck in the house together all the time. And if you think of it that way, then yes, it can be stressful. That social support can turn into stress. And so that's why I encourage you to think about what you can do, where you can go. So yes, you should not be congregating in big rooms full of people, but you can be in a small group of your own family. You can go outside. I know people who go and do things where there are very few people because they're doing them just themselves. Me, I like to take long drives, nobody involved but me. Some people like to go and walk on the beach if you have access to a beach or if you have access to a park. I love going to the park and walking in the park and sitting and thinking and, reading scripture if that's what I have to do. And nobody's with me and nobody's around, or me and my wife, we can go to different places and still be safe, but not be in the house. She goes to her own gym and she works out. I go and work out and do things. And so there are ways for couples and partners and children to not just be stuck in the house all the time, 24/7. Got to be a little creative today, but you can make it happen. So friends are very helpful. How spirituality influences coping. This is very important because I want you to recognize that spirituality is not just something that's in the Bible. It's science, spirituality, positive worldview, meaning and purpose, psychological integration, hope and motivation, personal empowerment, sense of control through prayer, role models for suffering, facilitates acceptance, meaning I'm not in this by myself, guidance for decision making, reduces stress, answers to ultimate questions, and of course, social support, both human and divine, prayer. This data comes from Harold Koenig out of Duke University, role of spirituality and faith in community recovery. So this is science. This is not just the Bible. It lifts up the Bible. What people who read the Bible already knew, science is now agreeing with and saying, yes, this is true. And people who pray have access to this level of health. Another thing that the research tells us, if you see these numbers popping up, spiritual involvement is related to greater well-being and happiness, less depression, faster recovery from those who are depressed, less anxiety and faster recovery from those who experience anxiety. So even if you experience depression or anxiety, people that have a spiritual involvement tend to recover faster. Less alcohol use and dependence for people who have a spiritual component in their life. Less drug use and dependence on drugs for people who have a spiritual component. And less suicide attempts, less suicide and more negative attitudes towards suicide for people who have a spiritual involvement in their life. So this is not, again, just about the Bible. The Bible is being supported by these scientists. Again, this data comes from Harold Koenig out of Duke University. Please check it out. Again, more information for you, just to really drive home that health and wellness in the 21st century is really mainstream. And you are doing the things that you need to do, not just when you study your Bible, not just when you go to church, in this case, probably via Zoom, but also when you take the time to look at that chart I showed you at the beginning about the 8 dimensions of health and wellness. What does that mean? Yes, having a good physical health outcome, staying healthy, getting good rest, drinking water, exercising, yes, but the other components, environmental, spiritual, intellectual. What are you doing every day for your intellectual health? Me, I like to do crossword puzzles and read and do word games and those kind of things to keep the brain sharp. So even if I'm sedentary, sitting in the house and not out and about, I still try to keep my brain working. I read a lot of different books all the time. And so that helps my brain stay sharp. So there are lots of things that you can do to support health and wellness, body, mind, spirit, that connection, that link, that holistic approach we're talking about. And when you think about these things, look at this one, significantly more altruism and volunteering. That's one of my favorites because I know I'm talking to a group of people who believe in service. Service is so important, not just because somebody needs your help, but because you need to help. Think about it. It's a two-way street. It's a bi-directional benefit. You are helping others. You are serving others. And there is an intrinsic value that comes with knowing that you have done something kind, that knowing that you have met a need, knowing that you have touched somebody in a way that only you could do it. There is significantly more gratitude, compassion, significantly greater social support when you have that spiritual involvement. It is significantly more likely that you will have a forgiving spirit. And it is significantly more likely that you will have greater hope. And if you have greater hope, you can pass that hope on to the people that are fortunate enough and blessed enough to have you as a friend. And so do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. One of my favorite texts there. Mental and emotional well-being is essential to overall health. You can't do it alone, folks. You need each other. We need each other. We need other human beings to help us get through these difficult times. Yes, we have to be creative in how we interact with one another, but there's nothing wrong with a little creativity. Make it fun. It could be fun. I had a marriage couple. I was doing a group a couple months ago, and they had plans to go to Hawaii, and of course they had to cancel. Everything was canceled. They were so distraught for their anniversary. Oh, we had these big plans. We've been planning for years. And my suggestion to them was, I said, tell you what, make sure the kids get a babysitter. I said, and then what you're going to do is you're going to buy the Lays, you're going to buy the pineapples, you're going to buy all the things that you normally would have done. And then you're going to have a Hawaiian anniversary in your living room. You're going to spread it out. You're going to decorate the room, and you're going to have a Hawaiian vacation in your living room. They did it, and they reported back to me and said, Dr. Wright, oh, that was a great idea. It was kind of corny at first, but you know what? We had a ball. It was a blast, and we had fun, and we did what we could do with what we did have. And we did not focus on what we couldn't do and what we didn't have. So emotional and mental well-being, it's a positive mental health that I'm talking about. It allows people to realize their full potential, cope with the stresses of life and productivity, and make meaningful contributions to their communities. Right now, more than ever, it is not an accident, folks, that we are in this space and time. It is an opportunity to make meaningful contributions to your community. This is not the time to sit back on your hands and lament a pandemic. This is not the time to sit back and say, oh, I wish things were different. Oh, what's the new normal? Oh, I wish things were the way they used to be. This is not the time for that. This is the time to serve. This is the time to be creative. This is the time to recognize that your boat is not the same as others. And it's okay to not be okay. And so let's work this thing through together in such a way that even though I may be suffering, even though I may be really anxious about some things, and that's normal, that's human, but it doesn't stop me from serving. It doesn't stop me from being a blessing to those around me. And so mental and emotional well-being takes on lots of factors. You have positive mental and emotional well-being depends on many of the things that you see in front of you. Quality of relationships with family and friends is really essential right now because everyone may not feel the same way about what they're going through. Some people may be more anxious than others. Some people may be more worried about being in the house so long. Their children are like, man, when can we go back to school? When can we do some of the things we used to do? They're going to think differently than teenagers. Teenagers have their own thoughts about what's going on. Have these conversations with your loved ones. If you don't have children, you have a partner, have these conversations with your partner. If you're living alone and you don't have anybody living in your house with you, pick up the phone. Call people that you can call. Talk to people. Stay engaged. You can be social even though you're distancing. You can be social even though you're distancing. The ability to participate and contribute to the community still exists, maybe more now than ever. I've seen people drop off cases of water, leave them on people's doorsteps and food and ring the doorbell, wave and keep it moving. Other people didn't even wave. They just put, essentials. They knew somebody needed something. They took care of it and they kept their social distance as it were, or their sheltering in place as it were, but they still help somebody. The ability to access appropriate mental health services when needed is essential. God did not put us on this earth to not help each other. And so just like you go to the cardiologist if you have a heart issue, just like you go to the internal medicine physician if that is your challenge, whatever your challenge is, God has provided experts, professionals, and that includes mental health and behavioral health experts as well. Do not deny yourself the opportunity to connect with people who are trained to help you. And so how can individuals and families promote mental and emotional well-being? You can build positive and strong relationships with family and friends. You can become more involved in your community. I've already told you that my belief, and I've seen it acted out in my own life, and I've seen it with others, that when you help others, when you serve the community, your situation or the way you look at your situation changes. The way you look at your situation changes. So even if your situation doesn't change immediately, your mindset toward it may change because of what you get back from helping others. Encourage children and adolescents to participate in as many extracurricular out-of-school activities as possible. Just because they're not in school every day doesn't mean there are activities that still cannot be accessed. You have to be creative, but you can still make it happen. Work to make sure children feel comfortable talking about problems such as bullying and seeking appropriate assistance as needed. Now we have all this time on our hand, folks. If you haven't figured out a way to engage in conversations with your young person, your teenager, or even the adult in your life, now's the time to figure those things out. It's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to let people know that I'm here for you. I may not have all the answers, but I care for you and I'm here for you. And if you want to talk, let's talk. And the thing is, make sure you're able to listen. All right. So 10 tools I want you to take with you today. I want you to connect with others, again, in safety. If you go out and about, wear your mask, keep your distance, unless you're with your own immediate family, unless there's particular things you have to do. Some of us have to go to work and some of us have to do certain things. So do it safely, but you can connect with others via the phone. If you're feeling lonely, pick up the phone. If you're a person that hasn't talked to someone for a long time and you think they may be feeling lonely, pick up the phone, right? You can shelter in place and still be social. Stay positive, get physically active. I did my exercises this morning, I'm not a spring chicken anymore, but I got through it. Okay. So you can do it. Help others. Get enough sleep. What does that mean? That means enough sleep for you, right? Create joy, satisfaction, eat well. These are all things that the Adventist Health Message knows quite well. Practice what you know. Take care of your spirit. Again, that mindfulness, that meditation. Yes, continue to do your Bible studies. Yes, continue to do your prayers in the morning and the evening, whenever you pray. But also take some time for yourself to just work on your own spirit. Deal better with hard times. Hard times are not going away, folks. Life happens. And when it does, God does his greatest work in you. Get professional help if you need it. We are out here. We are trained. Many of us are Christian. Many of us have a belief system that would match with your belief system. So if that's why you're not doing it, that is not an excuse. You cannot put everything on your clergy. You cannot expect your clergy to be an expert in everything. And so let he or she be an expert in the things that God has given them. And then take the other things that are burdening you and take those to the places and the people that have also been trained to help you. And so promote recovery across your community. Recovery is facilitated by relationships and environments that provide hope, empowerment, choices, and opportunities. And that is what people promote, reaching their full potential as individuals and community members. That is health and wellness in the 21st century. I just wanted to add a few texts. You can look at these at your leisure. Hope in times of trouble. Psalm 46, 10 and 11 is one of my favorites. Jeremiah 29, 11 and 13. You guys mostly can probably quote those yourself. Romans 8, 28 to 31. 1 Peter 5, 6 to 11. Romans 5, 3 to 8. And Psalm 9, 9 and 10. Again, these are just some of my favorites. Take the time to find your favorites and read them on a daily basis. You'd be surprised what it will do for you. Finally, I want you to take time to relax. Give yourself time to recharge and renew your thoughts. That's part of that mindfulness meditation. Sometimes you got to step away. And again, if you're not able to go far, you can still get out of the house. If you're not able to get on an airplane and travel in that way, that's okay. There are other ways to escape from your everyday and get to a place that is helpful. I already told you I like to drive, and so I get in my car and I drive, right? That is healthy for me. It may not be for you. Find what works for you and then practice it on a regular basis. I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world, you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. Those are the words of Jesus. Those are the words of our Heavenly Father. Those are the words of the person who modeled a life before us. And did he not have trouble? Yes, he did. Were there not crises? Yes, there were. Were there not difficulties that seemed like you couldn't get out of them? Absolutely. And so nothing has changed in that respect. What has changed is that he has made it all so beautifully, knowing to us that it is taken care of. It is taken care of because he has taken care of it. And so do not fear. Do not have anguish and anxiety about the things you can't control. Do the things you can do. Be creative, be helpful, be supportive, be a servant leader. All of those things will make you feel really, really good in this time. And so your mind, body, and spirit will be connected to health in the 21st century. Thank you so much, folks. It's been great talking with you today. I look forward to the time when we will all be in the same space and I can come down and shake your hand and, yes, give you a hug. If you want to contact me, ask me questions offline, you can do that. There's my website, www.drhgene.com, or you can email me, ask@drhgene.com. And there's a phone number as well if you want to leave a message. I'm glad to talk with you. If there are those of you that are interested in coaching, I do coaching and I do a lot of different things and consultation. And again, I'm God's servant. I'm here to help. Let me know how I can be of service to you. Thank you so much.
Dr. Gene, thank you so much for such an informative and inspiring presentation today. You covered quite a few things that were just a real blessing. Question came in that if hugs and physical touch are not advisable right now, are there any other activities that offer similar support? And I think you covered that well in terms of the 10 things that you left us with in that presentation. But here's another concern that came forth. With the stress of current social challenges, with the pandemic, the political, racial, and financial, just to name some generally, all of which can lead to some sort or some form of depression. What are some warning signs that indicate that depression or depressive moment has moved from just a, if we can say, normal depression to clinical depression that would require professional help?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Elder Griffith. And what I would tell you is when I think of what the writer may have said, normal depression, think about the blues. You're just kind of down, you're not feeling yourself, something like that. That's something that most people actually go through. When it rises to the level of being clinical where you need to get some help is when it is impacting the 3 areas of your life that are most important. And so if you're an adult, that generally is your home, your work, or your community. That's where we spend most of our time. So if it's impacting your ability to function in your home, right? Things are not right. You're not able to engage. You're not able to do what you normally do. Obviously, your job, for those of us that are struggling with that, some of us are still working from home. Some of us have lost their jobs. And so that looks different for different people. And so what does that look like for you? And then in the community, again, something that has been really changed since the pandemic. And so the answer to that is, and I tell people this all the time, you may not always be the one that notices it. It may be somebody in your life that notices your behavior has changed. And so if you're a person that was more engaging and now you're not, and it's for a longer period of time, you're a person that used to laugh and be involved in things and get joy out of things, and now you don't. You were a person that, you had decent sleep, but now you don't. You either sleep too much or you don't sleep at all. You find yourself waking up every 2 or 3 hours, right? That's a change in behavior. And generally, the person that's experiencing those changes may not always recognize it in themselves. And so that's why it's important to stay connected to people, because they may see something changing your behavior that you haven't noticed. So the short answer, Elder Griffith, is when you see the change, because what I can tell you, there's a difference between signs and symptoms. Symptoms are the things the individual is feeling and going through and experiencing. Signs are the behavioral changes that are external that other people see. And so when you see someone's behavior changing, that's when you kind of know, let me keep an eye on this person because they're not behaving the way they normally do with me. And that's the only gauge you can go by, is how you normally see them. And then that changes. Now, is that more difficult because we're in a sheltering in place kind of area? Yes, absolutely. And that's why I encourage people to get on the phone, get on Zoom, stay connected as best you can so that we can monitor each other and each other's health. Staying healthy is not just my responsibility. It's also my responsibility to stay connected to other people that I love and care for.
Thank you so much. That's very helpful. And to our to our listening audience, this presentation is recorded. You can go back and look at the entire presentation on the Southwestern Union Conference Facebook or YouTube pages, and it takes there was a lot of information that was given, a lot of helpful information that we believe will be a tremendous help to each of us as we're facing and trying to stay healthy during these challenging times. Without a doubt, we've never experienced what we are having to deal with right now. And so, Dr. Wright, thank you so much for giving us your time and sharing with us this vital information. We look forward to you being back with us. This is an ongoing series that we're going to be focusing in on the entire year. We won't be on each month. About every other month, we will be coming up with a different topic. Dr. Wright will definitely be one of our future presenters to be able to continue with this. And before we close, Doc, there is something else that you may want to introduce, because I know that you're working on a new book, and just give us a little tidbit in terms of what we can expect in the future as it deals with emotional, spiritual, and mental health, having a balance and being healthy in that source. I think this next presentation is going to be more specifically toward the clergy, but just give us a little snapshot of what's going on.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. And so I'm working on something called Healthy Pastor, Healthy Church. Who comforts the spiritual leader? And the reason I'm working on that, I'm doing a lot of consultation around the country and frankly, even internationally, with faith leaders that are, and I'm so blessed that they're willing to be transparent about the fact that they're struggling through this time, this pandemic, this social unrest, all the things that everybody else is struggling with, clergy are struggling with, maybe even more so because they are being asked to shoulder a lot of the burden of their congregants, and they still have their own families, their own children. And so one of the things that I've done a couple of times already, and I'm doing some stuff in the next couple of weeks, is I'm looking at clergy mental health. Mm-hmm. And I've put together a survey to kind of help clergy anonymously, of course, share with me what are the challenges. And so I've put together a presentation that I'll be glad to share with you guys in the future about what are the main things that clergy are saying are the challenges. What are the issues? And one of the big things that have come up, Elder, for clergy is how do I engage with my children? Not understanding, the disconnect. And so in my first book, Find Strength in Your Struggle, I have 2 chapters in there titled The Parent-Child Disconnect. And so I've taken that and the questions that the clergy have sent me, and I formed a sort of a presentation and even an opportunity for coaching for clergy that need more hands-on. I offer a coaching consultation for clergy, which we can talk about at another time, or you can contact me yourself. But that's what's coming, Elder. And it's so good because the information I'm putting together is actually coming from clergy. So I'm still utilizing the resources and the research that I have available to me, but it wouldn't be the same if I was not able to get information from clergy telling me, and from all denominations. I mean, I'm working with all types of Protestant denominations, Catholic as well, but also even I do a lot of work in the Muslim community. And so imams, rabbis, priests, pastors, and believe it or not, Elder, they have very similar challenges. Yeah. Very similar challenges. And so that's why I call clergy first responders. And that's why I call teachers and educators and administrators like you first responders. Why? When a police officer sees danger, they run to it. When a firefighter sees the burning building, they run in it. Mm-hmm. Right? Pastors, they're right there on the front lines. Teachers on the front lines. And that's why I make that comparison of clergy and educators and administrators of the church especially are first responders and co-responders, because you all have the burden to comfort those that are hurting, to comfort those. And they don't always recognize the fact that you may not have gone and got your MD or your PhD in physical health or psychology. They think that the clergy should know about schizophrenia. They think that the clergy should be able to comfort with domestic violence. They think that the clergy should be able to do all these things that may not have been the training in seminary. And so my thing is, I'm really promoting, Elder, a co-response, a co-partnership between mental health professionals and faith leaders. I really want to see that partnership tighten up, because you all provide services that a mental health professional do not provide. And we provide services that clergy don't provide. And so I'm really advocating for a partnership between the faith community, faith leaders especially, and mental health professionals, so that we can together co-respond and address the challenges that our people are experiencing today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wright. It's just been a pleasure to have you on this broadcast today. And so as we close today, we're praying for each and every one of you who have been listening in. And remember that you can see the entire presentation by contacting on the Southwestern Union Conference Facebook or YouTube pages, and it's going to be there for a while. And so we want you to take advantage of that. May God bless each and every one of you. I'm Pastor Buford Griffith. I am the Family Ministries Director for the Southwestern Union, also serves as the Executive Secretary for our Union Territory. May God richly bless you. We pray that this has been a blessing for you. Pass it on. Tell your friends, your family members about this, and we'll see you the next time. God bless you.